I get most of my games on sale, usually a good deal after they initially released, and I also usually let them sit in my backlog for some time before I get around to playing them. And with the PlayStation VR 2 still at least a season away, possibly several, I wanted to help bridge that content gap in PSVR by finally visiting and giving a quick review to some of those games that I feel deserve a second chance. So, let us talk about Immortal Legacy: The Jade Cipher, because this game has polarized reviews, but I'm here to call it one of the best PlayStation VR games of all time. I see a lot of comparisons made to Uncharted and a couple to Resident Evil, and I do endorse those. But I loved Immortal Legacy much more than either. So I want to dig in and show why I had such a good experience with this game, and then address some of the negative comment patterns as well. Some basics about this game. Immortal Legacy launched for PSVR in 2019, and then later the VR edition launched on Steam in early 2021. The developer is a Chinese studio, Viva Games, and I have seen some secondhand comments that the developers planned a sequel, but I have not been able to track their source, and the developer's website and Twitter give no indication, so as far as I know, this is all we're getting of Immortal Legacy. Genre-wise, this is an action game. You walk through largely linear but gorgeous environments, collecting guns and secrets and plot documents, while shooting your way through occasional groups of enemies, and occasionally breaking that loop to do a puzzle or have a boss fight or a cutscene. One hard-to-grasp thing about this game that I really loved was they made fantastic use of the PSVR technology without feeling like they were artificially shoehorning in VR sections, like sort of tech demos. I'm contrasting something here like Doctor Who: The Edge of Time VR, where they really pulled you out of the immersion to say, here's a rail shooter section in VR. Now here's a gramophone, but because it's VR, we actually let you turn the handle. Now, ooh, here's a big glowing moving thing. How cool is that to watch in VR? Immortal Legacy was a lot more subtle about that. The only real offender were these goofy rolling ball puzzle boxes that they stuck some of the collectibles inside, but you know what? Honestly, these puzzles controlled buttery smooth and only took like 4 seconds to solve, so it's honestly just more funny than immersion breaking. But here's some things they did great on the immersion: the climbing sections. So this is a popular thing in PlayStation VR games, or I guess all VR games, to have you sort of climbing up some rock wall. This one does not baby you and make the handholds glow in some alternate color. Now, you could consider this a usability bug, because it can be not easy to see where you're going. But I took it the other way and really loved it. It felt so much more immersive actually having to look at the wall you're going to climb and plan your route visually, looking for where it looks like there are handholds you can climb onto instead of the game shoveling it down your throat. Other note on immersion is the puzzles in general. They were scarce but well balanced, and that is to say easy, for a VR action game. So they took like just a little bit of reasoning, but they were never a thing I had to try hard on, essentially, and they never took too long, which had the benefit of feeling like, oh cool, I solved a puzzle, while also never breaking the action for much time. By now, you have witnessed some of these graphics. Viewed flat, they may just look average, but I gotta say, this game is truly stunning in virtual reality, especially considering the hardware limitations of the PlayStation 4. It is a technical marvel that they made this game look so good. There are these majestic overlooks, you get these huge, creepy cavern areas, and they also didn't shy away from photorealistic human models, which a lot of games take a shortcut and just sort of have blocky people. While I've mentioned the models, I cannot not talk about how this game is pretty male-gazy. They are super not shy about having goth butt woman strut around like immediately in front of your point of view. And they also threw in an e-girl for no reason, whose name is Cookie Pie. Plus, there's a sensual techno babe for good measure. And that's what I would say. But then when I checked their website, they have a character bio for Techno Babe. Apparently is named Dove, and they have no gender. So maybe the game is a little bit more progressive than I give credit for. The set design here is incredible. You get a couple of like, whoa moments on the mountainside where you begin the game. But maybe like 30-40% through the game, you enter the tunnels and the mines, and the game takes a really cool turn. You know how some media like changes genre drastically halfway through? And here I'm talking like Bloodborne, I'm talking the movie The Island and From Dusk Till Dawn. So the start of this game, I was playing Uncharted, and I finished this game playing something more like Resident Evil Code Veronica. I was really here for it. It happened really well. This game was scarier than Resident Evil 7 for me personally. The caves echo with monster cries, and you have a flashlight that goes out on you when you really don't want it to, and there's water sections, deep water sections with fish swimming in them, and goodness, that was one of the worst creepy parts of it. You also later you hit some creepy plastic lined hallways and lab doors that kind of reminded me of the forest or like the end of E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Plus, there are these huge underground techno retro future rooms that you enter, and you can just know that you have to expect the worst thing. This game was very, very fun to just be there in VR. That's the good stuff. It's time to pivot and hit the negatives. There are 3 major themes I saw showing up from detractors of Immortal Legacy. They said there are problems with the plot that I can see, there are problems with the difficulty, which I very much do not see, and problems with the controls, which I have some thoughts on. First, the plot. There are a lot of comments out there calling Immortal Legacy a fever dream with like insane / scattered / non-existent plot. And I can see what they mean, but I do think that's a little unfair. The plot is a little scattered. There's a couple of plot elements that are introduced and then never explained again, Lost style. And the game does end very abruptly. But it does do a disservice to the simple but perfectly reasonable plot that does exist. You're basically headed to a magical island to retrieve a magical artifact. You get separated from your companions and gotta fight your way out. It's fine. Something traumatic past, evil corporation, and a suspiciously long-lived mother, and the plot is honestly serviceable and easy to follow, if a little bit simple. Regarding difficulty, there are 3 bosses in the game that I had some trouble with, and they're all in the latter portions. 2 of those bosses I solved by admitting that I had a hoarding problem with my ammo, so I stopped being so conservative with it and decided to just unload my big guns, and those bosses were handled. The other of the 3 difficult bosses was the final boss, where I feel that difficulty is appropriate. And only the first of those had a frustrating run back. The others you could essentially just reload and reattempt immediately, so it was not frustrating to fight them again. Aside from bosses, I never had trouble fighting normal enemies. This game rains ammunition on you, so much so that every time I found a new gun, I had a choice of, should I throw away my pistol with its 90 bullets to pick this gun up, or should I throw away my SMG with 240 bullets? And there was hopefully a laser sight on everything, so it was really easy to do the aiming in VR. That meant that I favored my pistol and later my revolver for headshotting randoms. I kept my automatic rifles for bosses, and there was also a shotgun that came into play rarely for that middle ground of like powerful normal enemy that there honestly were not a lot of. There were not many things that a pistol just couldn't handle, so there was like so much ammo for the actual strong guns. Ammo is where I did specifically see several comments on Reddit complaining about the lack of it, which I think is really weird. They even went so far as to say they got soft lock by getting to tough combat sections with no way to go back for more ammo, but I can't grant this point at all. I probably threw away more bullets changing guns than I even fired during the game, and I ended the game with hundreds of bullets for each of my guns. By far, though, the most common theme in negative comments about this game are the controls. I absolutely loved them, but I did change the control scheme through the settings menu. Listen, everybody knows the PS Move controllers kind of suck for navigating around 3D space. Every developer has their own interpretation of it. A lot of people like the Skyrim control, where you move in the direction you're pointing the wand in your hand. Immortal Legacy had something different. I had the face button on my left hand, had me walking forward. X and O, which were the buttons surrounding that on my left hand, were for strafing left and right. So far, so good. On my right hand, X and O did the turning left and right. So as far as enemies were in front of me, this was highly functional. You can move with the left hand, strafe if you need to be tricky by just kind of rolling your thumb to one side or the other, and you can still aim and shoot with your right hand. The one weird control here was when you needed to back up, this was triangle on my right hand. The saving grace was you don't have to do this much. There was one boss where I found moving backwards highly beneficial, and otherwise moving backwards was just a more convenient way to back up from explosive charges I had planted on a wall before I shot them. The bottom line, though, with movement was when I was in a heated battle and I didn't have the brain space to think, okay, shoot, I need to strafe left, so I've got to press circle on my left hand or whatever. My gut reaction button mashy movement attempts actually turned out to be correct and what I had reflexively wanted my character to do, and that is a pretty good sign about the control development. One other highly specific criticism that is going to be unique to me because of how I play games and hoard everything, I was given some sort of mystical disc. I thought it was one of the collectible treasures, but it was clearly different because this one took up an inventory slot. And because I was so conservative with my ammo, I had a full inventory full of guns and explosives, so I actually had to sacrifice a weapon slot to keep this weird disc with me, assuming it would do something in the plot. It never did. I just basically wasted a weapon slot for this strange, useless disc for the rest of the game. So that's Immortal Legacy. Absolutely switch to Control Scheme C if you play this game, since A and B make no sense. But aside from that, I have only good things to say about this game. The graphics are top-notch, the gameplay is very fun, and they sneak in plenty of horror, which is my bread and butter. It's 100% worth a revisit, and should we be so blessed as to get a sequel, I will definitely be the first one in line to check it out. Thanks y'all, as always, for watching, and take care.